A new escalation tonight in the battle over House Dems' demands for more evidence from 81 Trump associates, ranging from the president's top aides and children to Mueller witnesses like Michael Caputo, a former Trump advisor who's lobbied for a foreign power on behalf of Russian energy conglomerates and who's done a hat trick, talking with Mueller's team and addressing both the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. He's never been accused of misleading investigators, and tonight Caputo's saying, why isn't all that enough? He suggests that Chairman Nadler review his past transcripts before these committees and move on. Now, some outlets have reported that means Caputo won't cooperate with the Democrats. Caputo says it's not the whole story, and he's claiming his own past cooperation. I am joined now by former Trump campaign aide Michael Caputo. I should mention, of course, it's Ash Wednesday, and former Watergate Special Prosecutor Nick Ackerman. Good evening to both of you.
Hi, how you doing, Art?
Good evening.
Michael, let me ask the question that the House Dems are asking, a lot of people around the country are asking. Why not go back in, tell the truth, and move forward?
First of all, I want to correct you. I've never lobbied Congress, certainly not for a foreign power, so I don't know where you get that. I've heard it before. It's patently false.
Well, we've had you on before. I didn't.
Right, I didn't catch it the last time. Yeah, I didn't catch it the last time.
You and I have spoken about it. You lobbied on behalf of Russian interest. Give us the best precision language.
I didn't lobby. I didn't lobby.
You advocated for Russian interests?
I did a press conference for Gazprom Media. I didn't lobby for Russian government or lobby any government or any foreign power in this country. I've never done it.
You're saying you didn't, right? I don't mean to mislead. That when you and I talked on the phone, you mentioned, well, you know, it makes sense they'd want to talk to you because you'd worked. You said for folks tied to the Kremlin. I mean, that's what I'm referring to.
No, I said I advised the Kremlin. I lived there for 7 years.
Yeah.
I was sent there by the Clinton administration to meddle in Russian elections. I've never lobbied the American government on behalf of the Russian government.
Not a registered lobbyist, but there's not a debate about the fact that you did a lot of stuff back then.
No doubt, no doubt. And
yeah.
I can understand why they wanted to talk to me. That's why they've interviewed me 3 different times now.
Well, let me get to the point here that you make a point that I think a lot of people could think sounds reasonable. You're saying you've talked to the House already. Why do you have to talk again? Explain.
Right. Well, first of all, when I was invited to speak to the House Intelligence Committee two years ago, coming up soon, I asked to be able to do that in public. And when they refused to let me do it in public, I agreed to do it anyway, voluntarily. And I asked them to release my testimony to the public. They refused to do that as well. The same thing went down with the Senate Intelligence Committee. And, of course, the Mueller team, they do all of that in private. But eventually, at some point in time, they're going to have to stop asking me to testify. This would be the 4th time I'm asked the same questions all over again. And from my perspective, it's a perjury trap. They're trying
before we get to perjury trap house, as some call it. I'm going to bring in Nick. One more thing for you on this, to be clear for the record, because all this matters to a lot of people. Right. Let me read from what they're asking you about. They're asking you about the June Trump Tower meeting, the contacts here with the Russian Federation and Trump associates, contacts from January 2016 with Manafort, Gates, Kilimnik, who of course is a big deal, and other figures. Right. Is your contention tonight that you have addressed all of that already?
Yes, my attorney, the former New York Attorney General, responded to that within 24 hours and told them I have none of the documents they're asking for.
Let me bring in Nick. What do you think of these arguments?
Well, I think my real question, Mr. Caputo, is, as I understand it, in May of 2016, which is a critical date, it's a month before the Trump Tower meeting on June 9th. It's right after the documents are stolen from the Democratic National Committee. You're approached by some Russian national who basically offers to provide information to you about Hillary Clinton in return for $2 million. I mean, have you been questioned at all by any of the committees on that issue?
I was questioned by the Mueller investigation about it, and I supplemented my testimony to the House and the Senate on that. And that entire episode, according to my attorney, who is former U.S. Attorney, former New York Attorney General Dennis Vacco, that whole exchange with a Russian national who was working for the FBI and offering information not from the Russian government, but from a Ukrainian national who worked for the Clinton Foundation, was not responsive to the request. If you read my request,
what evidence do you have that this person was working for the FBI? I mean,
oh my
real
goodness.
evidence.
I mean, are you new to this thing? Really? I mean,
I'm asking you what evidence.
I can tell you, I've told everybody, nobody seems to be interested in it. Go to DemocratDossier.com. The guy, I have a 17-year history with this guy working for the FBI. He signed an affidavit in
But
federal.
what evidence
Hold
do you
on, let
have?
me honest. Let me answer this. In U.S. federal court, he signed an affidavit saying he worked for 17 years as an FBI informant. I also have copies of 9 of his FBI informant visas, S-type visas, and he still sits in America today. It's not a question as to whether or not this guy was an FBI
Right.
informant.
Well, and Michael, what's
it's a
interesting-
question as whether he was the day he decided to have lunch.
What's
right.
interesting here also is, you know, in fairness, you've provided all those answers to Mueller, and I want to
Right.
be clear with viewers. You know, some people might not like that you chose to support Donald Trump, but you
Right.
did. In fairness, Mueller hasn't, to your knowledge, to our knowledge, reported-wise, found anything wrong with that contact. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when you told them your answer to that, what was your sense of how they viewed that meeting?
I think they viewed it as something they already knew about, and they were rather disappointed that I told them about it. I thought at the time that it looked like a perjury trap in and of itself, but I was fully honest to the Mueller team, and when we left that day, they said there was no need to talk to me again, and they never called me before the grand jury.
The last thing I want to ask you about, again, because we like to go to people who are directly involved in this, it's
Sure,
important, is you were saying here, I'm reading from what you're telling the committee, quote, you're not in possession of any documents relating to any contacts, 2015 to 2017, involving Russian Federation officials, agents, intermediaries, and Roger Stone. Now, as you know, there were people like Roger Stone who were ultimately indicted in part on saying no documents. I mean, that was the claim that Mueller got him on. You're certain on this? You stand by this?
No doubt. Roger Stone never discussed WikiLeaks, DC Leaks, or any of the other organizations he's accused of talking to. Never discussed those with me. I didn't know anything about it until I read about it in the media at all. So I'm completely in the clear on this. I have no legal exposure.
And,
But
and Nick,
did you ever-
Nick, a final thought. I'm going to move you on from, and I know you like to cross-examine. I'm going to move you on from that. A final thought. When you see what's happening here and this playing out,
Right.
is this the best way for the House Dems to pick up, or do they risk doing a bit of a retread? Which, again, whatever one thinks of some of these
Right.
officials, there is the argument here, and that's why we want to hear it. That they say, look, I've already given you that.
Well, I think that's right, but I think he just also, Mr. Caputo, admitted that he was not questioned by any of the committees about this incident in May of 2016. It may have been supplemented by an attorney, but the fact is they have the right to question him about that. If you're on one of these committees, even if you're in a prosecutor's office, you're going to look at what the prior testimony is. You're going to look at what hasn't been asked, and I don't know why they would waste their time going over the same material unless there's something new that they want to show them about that same material.
Yeah.
So I think, his complaint is well taken, but the question is, has he really provided everything that they're interested in?
Michael, can we end on a high note? Did you hear that? Nick Ackerman said that something you said was well taken. Well, I know you guys disagree about a lot of this, and Nick, you think there might be further indictments.
Absolutely.
And I bet, Michael, you may not.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
We don't know.
I don't think the Mueller investigations, I think they're on their way to the end of the road. The question is what happens with the House Judiciary Committee. And, listen, they told my attorney they would like me to come in, or asked if I would come in. My attorney said, you got to be nuts. Why would he come and testify again? Here's the thing, though. As probably one of the most marginal characters in that list of 81 people, if they're looking for me to come in, they're looking for all 81 to come in. It's going to be a long, long year.
Well, I was ending on the high note of you guys agreeing on a little something. You're not marginal. You're a guy who worked for Trump and had contacts in Russia, and as we've said, is not accused of wrongdoing. That's not marginal, though. That's in the heart of what a lot of people are probing. I want to give a special thanks to both of you. There aren't enough conversations, in my humble opinion, like this on the facts in these open cases. Nick Ackerman and Michael Caputo, thanks to both of you. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.